The morning hum of Soul Grind Cafe wasn't just about caffeine. It was rhythm, fire, and a whole lot of Tiana Brooks. Sunlight spilled through the windows, casting golden rays on the burnt orange walls and gold-rimmed art pieces that danced with Afrocentric pride. The air was alive with the scent of caramel pecan roast, buttery scones, and big dreams. Behind the sleek quartz counter, Tiana's hips rolled in sync with the velvet bass of a Jill Scott track as she steamed almond milk for a vanilla mocha. "Table 4 needs that extra shot of courage," joked Jasmine, sliding a ticket toward her. "Tell him courage is on the house," Tiana smirked, "but that mocha's still $6.50. She flipped her curls over one shoulder, flashing a smile that said she was running things, and she knew it. Tiana was magnetic. Glossy lips, radiant brown skin, full hips hugged tight by a burgundy wrap skirt, and a mustard blouse that hugged her curves like it was custom made. She didn't just walk in confidence, she wore it like armor. But that hadn't always been the case. She could still hear those high school taunts echoing in her head. "You talk too much. You built too big. You'll intimidate every man that comes near." They were wrong. Now she owned the baddest cafe in the block, had 3 features in city magazines, and a wait list for Friday poetry nights that stretched around the corner. Tiana turned toward Jasmine, noticing her tense shoulders and darting glances toward the front window. "What's up, Jazz?" Jasmine chewed her lip. "Those dudes from last week, they're back, just lurking." Tiana's eyes snapped to the window. Sure enough, 3 guys in sagging jeans and loud sneakers, loitering near the sidewalk sign that read, "You're brutiful. Bad energy ain't welcome." The tallest of them had already slipped inside and leaned a little too close across the counter where Jasmine stood. "Let me get that number, sweetheart," he drawled, licking his lips. "I know you see me looking. You cute." Jasmine leaned back, her eyes wide with discomfort. Tiana's voice cracked like thunder across the cafe. "You got 10 seconds to back off before I bounce you out of here like burnt toast." The boy turned with a smirk. "Relax, shorty, we just playin'." "I don't play games with trash," Tiana shot back, already moving from behind the counter. "This is her job, not your fantasy." He stepped forward, chest puffed. "You don't scare me." Without breaking stride, Tiana jabbed a perfectly manicured finger into his chest. "You should be scared, 'cause if I wasn't in these heels, you'd already be on the pavement." The cafe went still. Forks hovered midair. Coffee paused at mouths. Tiana's gaze cut to the other 2 outside. "You here for coffee or drama? Say the wrong thing. I got plenty of both." The tallest muttered something under his breath, but when Tiana stepped even closer, he backed down. And then one of the boys lunged. Maybe it was to intimidate. Maybe he really thought she'd fold. Huge mistake. In a blink, Tiana caught his wrist, pivoted, and threw him flat onto the hardwood floor like she'd been waiting for a reason. The cafe gasped. Jasmine covered her mouth. "Out!" Tiana spat. The boy scrambled up, his face twisted with rage. "You gon' regret this. We'll be back." "Please do," Tiana growled, "so I can teach you what regret really looks like." And just then, the door swung open with a soft ding. In walked Malik Jordan, tall, broad-shouldered, in a slate-gray shirt rolled at the sleeves and fitted black jeans. Tiana turned, chest rising. The day was just getting started. Maxwell chuckled and took a seat at the window bar. Melissa glanced at Kesha, who was now biting her bottom lip and grinning like she'd just witnessed the start of a rom-com. Mrs. Lana perched at her usual corner table with her crocheted shawl and a cup of chamomile, raised her brows knowingly. Melissa straightened her spine, smoothed her blouse, and grabbed a clean towel. She didn't rush. That wasn't her style. She let anticipation steep like tea, slow, deliberate, full of flavor. Maxwell watched her with that same calm intensity as before. Not predatory, not performative, just present, like the world had quieted for him the moment she walked over. "So," she said, leaning slightly on the counter, towel in hand. "Back for more boldness?" He smiled, slow and confident, the kind of smile that said he didn't run from storms. He walked through them. Only the kind that comes in porcelain mugs and leopard skirts. Melissa arched a brow. "Careful. You sound like you came here for trouble." He leaned forward, his forearms resting casually on the bar, fingers interlaced. "No, ma'am. I came here for clarity, and maybe a little conversation. The coffee's just a good excuse." Melissa blinked. It wasn't often someone threw charm her way without trying to overpower her with it. He wasn't performing for her. He was inviting her in. "You really walk around using lines like that?" "Only when I mean them," he said without missing a beat. She tried to suppress the grin tugging at her lips and failed. With a low chuckle, she moved behind the counter and began working the espresso machine. "You didn't order," she called over the sound of grinding beans. "I was hoping you'd surprise me." Melissa turned, one hand on her hip. "You sure about that?" "I trust your taste." That got her. Something in the way he said it, low, sincere, sent an unexpected warmth curling beneath her rib cage. She grabbed the Colombian roast, rich and dark, and began crafting a custom cup. She added cinnamon, a touch of molasses syrup, and a dash of cayenne. Bold, sweet, with a little heat on the back end, just like her. When she handed it over, Maxwell didn't sip immediately. He looked at the cup, then at her. "You put a little attitude in there?" he teased. She folded her arms. "If I did, it'll go down smooth." He finally took a sip, eyes narrowing slightly as he tasted the unexpected kick. Then he nodded slowly. "Damn." Melissa smiled, satisfied. "I call it the boss blend. I can see why." From across the cafe, Jasmine whispered to one of the other baristas, "If this turns into a rom-com, I'm quitting to write screenplays." Melissa ignored her, focusing instead on the man in front of her. He exuded control, but not in a loud way. There was something behind those eyes, something deeper than the casual confidence. Maybe pain, maybe stories he hadn't told. She was good at reading people. She'd built a business on understanding not just what people wanted, but what they needed. "So Maxwell," she said, wrapping her hands around a mug of her own, "what do you do, besides strolling into cafes like a GQ photo shoot?" He laughed softly. "Consultant." "Oh, that's vague." "It's intentionally vague," he said, amused. "But to keep it simple, I help restructure businesses in crisis. Leadership, logistics, strategy. Mostly for companies trying to recover from internal breakdowns. So you're a fixer." "You could say that." She nodded slowly. "We don't need fixing here." "I know. That's why I came back." Melissa tilted her head, not sure if it was a flirtation or a confession. "So what brings a corporate fixer to a neighborhood cafe like this?" "Someone recommended the place, said it had the best coffee, the best vibe, and the boldest owner in the city." She raised a brow. "You memorized that line?" "Nope. That was all me." There was a pause between them, a beat thick with curiosity and something else. Not quite flirtation, not quite business. A third thing, something still unnamed. Outside, a breeze rustled the chalkboard sign. Inside, the espresso machine hissed softly. Mrs. Lana was now openly eavesdropping, her eyes dancing with amusement. "I saw what you did," Maxwell said, his tone shifting, grounding. "With those boys." Melissa's gaze hardened slightly. "They've been harassing my staff for weeks. I warned them. They didn't listen." "I'm not questioning it," he said. "I'm saying I respect it." She exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing. "I'm used to handling things." "I can see that. But just so you know, not every strong woman has to carry every fight alone." Melissa tilted her head. "You offering backup?" "I'm offering presence. There's a difference." That silenced her, not because she didn't have a comeback, but because he'd hit a nerve she didn't expect anyone to touch. Presence. It had been a long time since someone offered to simply be there without trying to take over. Before she could respond, Maxwell rose slowly, finishing the last sip of his coffee. He reached into his wallet and slid a generous tip beneath the mug. "I'll be back again," he said, smoothing the front of his blazer. "Not just for the coffee." Melissa didn't answer right away. She just nodded, watching him walk toward the door, each step measured, unhurried, confident. As the chime jingled behind him, Jasmine rushed to the counter. "Girl," she hissed, "he came back like a whole plot twist." Mrs. Lana cackled from her table. "If he don't ask you out in 3 days, I'm doing it myself." Melissa just shook her head, hiding a slow, reluctant smile as she rinsed out Maxwell's mug. The warmth she'd felt before was stronger now, no longer faint. It lingered, like cedarwood, like confidence, like curiosity steeped in something real. And for the first time in a long time, Melissa didn't feel like she was defending her castle. She felt like maybe, just maybe, someone was finally worthy of walking beside her in it. "One of them told me I was boring," Maxwell said, pulling off a piece of funnel cake and watching the powdered sugar float down like soft snow. "Another said I worked too much, and one just never stopped taking selfies. I was background scenery to her spotlight." Melissa raised a brow, licking sugar from her thumb. "Let me guess. Designer bags, personal trainers." "I'm a brand energy?" Maxwell smirked. "All vibes, no roots." Melissa laughed, low and real. "And now here you are, on a bench, with a funnel cake, talking about exes with a woman who's been told she talks too loud and eats too much." He turned toward her, expression soft but steady. "I've never met a woman with more presence than you. You walk in and the room adjusts." Melissa's laugh caught in her throat. "That's dramatic." "No," he said, shaking his head. "It's truth. You don't just take up space. You anchor it." She looked at him, caught off guard by the weight of his words. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't spinning charm. He was seeing her, and not just the curated version, the real, unfiltered Melissa, stretch marks, attitude, scars, and all. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was thick, alive, like the pause between the crack of thunder and the fall of rain. "I used to think," she said after a long moment, "that love was a performance. Like, if I was good enough, small enough, soft enough, someone would finally stay. But I got tired of folding myself to fit into men's pockets." Maxwell's brows furrowed slightly, his hand still holding a torn piece of funnel cake, forgotten. "And I'm not bitter," she continued. "I'm just full. I fill rooms, I fill hearts, I fill up space, and most men are starving but scared of a full-course meal. They want appetizers, something light, something they can throw away when they're done." He nodded, eyes never leaving hers. "You're not a snack, you're a feast, and most of them couldn't handle the nourishment." Melissa blinked. stunned by the poetry of his response. Her chest tightened with something like emotion, something soft and sore. She turned away to look at the park. Children chased bubbles. An old man strummed a guitar beneath a tree. The sky was that golden syrup kind of evening, warm, slow, forgiving. "Do you always talk like that?" she asked, her voice quiet. Maxwell shrugged. "Only when I'm trying to keep up with a woman who deserves to be spoken to like a queen." Melissa bit her lip, smiling against her will. She looked down at her lap, where bits of sugar clung to her black leggings. She wiped it away with the edge of a napkin, but her hands trembled slightly. "You scare me," she said softly. He tilted his head. "Why?" "Because you don't want to change me. You just show up. You see me. And that's scarier than being ignored." Maxwell reached over, fingers brushing hers. "You deserve to be seen, Melissa. And I'm not here to dim you. I'm here to witness." Her breath hitched in her throat. They sat there, hand in hand, as a breeze lifted the scent of funnel cake and grass around them. In the distance, the skyline of Atlanta glinted against the evening sun. But right here, on this bench, they weren't billionaires or business owners. They were just two souls, finally choosing each other. That week, Maxwell started showing up early at the cafe. Sometimes before the sun rose, before the ovens warmed, before the city yawned awake. He'd bring breakfast, smoothies, bagels, sometimes homemade banana bread, and just sit on a stool as she prepped for the day. "You don't have to be here," she told him one morning, covered in flour and frustration after the pastry oven had shorted again. "I want to be," he said, without looking up from the list of upcoming poetry night performers she'd printed and left on the counter. He wasn't there to fix the oven. He wasn't there to give her advice on operations or cash flow or growth strategies, though he could have. He just stayed, poured coffee, washed mugs when they stacked too high, played DJ on quiet mornings when she needed music that matched her mood. "You know," Melissa said one morning, leaning against the counter with a mug of hibiscus tea, "you're kinda ruining my whole I don't need a man routine." Maxwell smiled without looking up. "Keep the independence. Just make room for someone who doesn't want to take it from you." Her heart skipped. One evening, weeks later, they stood on the rooftop of Maxwell's downtown condo. The view was ridiculous. City lights blinking like stars that got too ambitious. The air was cool. The scent of grilled salmon wafted from the nearby table where Maxwell had tried and mostly succeeded at cooking dinner. "I'm still figuring out what this is," Melissa said, glass of wine in hand. "Me too," he replied, "but I know it's not casual." She nodded. "No, it's not." He stepped closer. "Melissa, I know we come from different worlds. I know people will look at us sideways. The polished CEO and the loud cafe girl." She scoffed. "Loud cafe owner, thank you." He grinned. "Right, my mistake. But I don't care what they see. I care about what I feel when I'm near you, and I haven't felt this in a long time." Melissa's chest rose with her breath. Slow, steady, brave. "I never needed saving," she said. "I know. I never needed a man to complete me. I wouldn't dare try. But I think I want partnership." Maxwell stepped in, so close now their breaths mingled. "Then let's build something side by side." Melissa looked at him, the city lights catching in her eyes like stars, and nodded slowly. Not a yes to everything, not a surrender, but an agreement to try, to trust, to let herself be seen and still be loved. Back at Bold Brew Cafe, Mrs. Lana stared out the window one morning, sipping her chamomile. "He's good for her," she said to Kesha. Kesha nodded. He doesn't dim her. He reflects her. Exactly, Mrs. Lana said, smiling to herself. That's what makes it love. And from across the cafe, Melissa glanced up from her laptop, her eyes meeting Maxwell's where he sat, sipping his Boss blend at his usual window seat. And she smiled, because she finally understood what it meant to be fully seen and fully chosen. Melissa stood in the center of Bold Brew Midtown, clipboard in one hand, rose gold iPad in the other, her heels clicking softly against the polished concrete floors. The scent of cinnamon croissants, brown sugar bacon, and sage butter biscuits filled the air. Neo Soul played gently from the ceiling speakers. It was 8:42 a.m., and the brunch crowd was already gathering, students tapping away at laptops, couples holding hands across lattes, women in blazers sipping chai like power brokers in stilettos. The new location was triple the size of the original. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the cafe in golden morning light. A spiral staircase led to the second floor where soft seating overlooked a performance stage framed by velvet curtains. Behind the counter, a massive mural stretched across the back wall. Melissa, hands on hips, head tilted slightly, lips curled into her signature smirk. Around her were painted flames, coffee beans, books, vinyl records, and blooming hibiscus. Above her afro read the words, "Built bold, brewed braver." The mural had gone viral the day it was unveiled. Hundreds of women had posted photos in front of it with captions like, "For every girl who was told she was too much. Curves, courage, and caffeine, Melissa's recipe." She walked in like she owned it, because she did. Melissa's wedding ring glinted beneath the track lighting as she scribbled notes on the menu updates. The diamond still caught eyes wherever she went, but it was her presence that made people pause. Across the room, Maxwell stood near the window, phone in one hand, 2 almond lattes in the other. He wore a black short-sleeved turtleneck, slim-cut dress pants, and a deep navy overcoat. When he spotted her, his eyes softened with the kind of admiration that hadn't dimmed in a year, not even once. He walked over and kissed her temple. "Your morning fix," he said, handing over the coffee. She took a sip, nodding. "Perfect." "You expected anything less?" he grinned. "I trained you well," she smirked. Mrs. Lana sat nearby, now a retired teacher in cafe royalty. She wore her Sunday best even on weekdays, pearls, wide hats, and the sharpest tongue in the room. Across from her sat Kesha, now the assistant manager of both locations. Her confidence had blossomed. Sleek braids, pencil skirts, and a voice that no longer trembled when giving direction. 3 walk-ins just asked for the Melissa Special, Kesha reported with a grin. "That's the 3rd time this week." Melissa chuckled. "We really should add it to the menu officially." Mrs. Lana sipped her tea, watching them fondly. "You didn't just build a business, baby. You built a world, and you let the rest of us live in it." Melissa smiled, humbled. But the moment was interrupted when Dante, the new barista, called from behind the counter. "Miss Melissa, can I talk to you for a second?" She walked over, curious. Dante, once a lanky teen with a chip on his shoulder and a rap sheet of poor decisions, now stood upright in a crisp apron, wiping the counters like he was prepping for church service. "I just wanted to say, thanks again," he said, nervously scratching the back of his neck, "for giving me a chance when I ain't deserve it." Melissa looked at him, her eyes firm but kind. "You earned the chance, Dante. I don't hand out grace. I offer it to people who show me they'll respect it." He nodded, visibly emotional. "I never forgot what you told me. Respect or you walk." "And look at you now," she smiled. "Still walking. but this time with purpose. Dante grinned, chest lifting a little higher. Outside, the line had begun to stretch around the corner. Local reporters were already waiting to do another feature. Word was out. Bold Brew was more than a cafe. It was a movement, a brand, a cultural landmark. And Melissa had become something more. Not a trend, not a sensation. A blueprint. She gave TEDx talks on community-centered entrepreneurship. She partnered with historically black colleges to mentor young women in business. She'd been on panels, podcasts, and Forbes's Women Who Shift the Room list. She didn't chase exposure. Excellence made people look her way. One particular afternoon, a young girl, maybe 10 or 11, walked into the cafe with her mother. She wore oversized glasses, a bright yellow sundress, and sneakers with rainbow laces. She tugged her mom's sleeve and pointed at Melissa's mural. "Mommy," she whispered, "she looks like me." Melissa, overhearing, knelt down. "You mean bold, beautiful, unstoppable?" The girl nodded shyly. Melissa pulled a small pin from her apron, a gold coffee bean with wings, and handed it to the girl. "Then you wear this. And remember, you don't have to shrink. Not for anyone. You take up all the space you need." The little girl beamed. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Maxwell watched from the register, heart full. Later, as they closed up, he wrapped his arms around Melissa from behind. "You know," he murmured against her ear, "if I weren't already married to you, I'd fall in love with you all over again, just for that moment." She leaned into him, closing her eyes. "I didn't build this for applause," she whispered. "I built it for the girls who were told they were too much. And now you're showing them they were never not enough," he replied. Later that evening, after the last table had been cleared and the lights dimmed, Melissa stood at the second-floor balcony of Bold Brew, looking out over her kingdom. The world had once tried to whisper her away, shrink her, question her worth. Now the world listened. The headlines had changed. The stories now read, "Bold brewed unapologetically herself. She turned coffee into a culture. Melissa Johnson, a queen who needed no crown to rule." And as she took one last sip of her latte, wedding ring shining, mural watching, and team thriving, Melissa smiled. Because she hadn't just rewritten her story, she'd redefined the ending. And she was only on chapter 1. 2 years later, Florence, Italy. The narrow alley was washed in gold, every stone glowing in the late afternoon sun like it had soaked in centuries of light. It was the kind of quiet only European cities knew how to hold. Soft, reverent, steeped in the aroma of espresso and old-world magic. Café de Vita, tucked at the edge of Via della Spada, was a modest little shop with faded green shutters and climbing ivy on its walls. The wrought iron sign above the entrance swung gently in the breeze, and the bell above the door let out a delicate chime each time a local slipped in. Melissa sat at the corner window table, the same one she'd claimed every afternoon since arriving in Florence nearly a month ago. The seat had just enough sun to warm her skin, but not enough to make her sweat. A small white fan stood on the counter nearby, oscillating in slow, dramatic sweeps. It hummed in rhythm with the tiny cafe's soft jazz playlist. Today, Melissa wore a flowing lemon-yellow wrap dress that tied just above her belly. The fabric swayed gently over her thighs, and every now and then the baby kicked, a thump, a roll, a flutter, each one a reminder that her world was changing once again. She smiled, resting her hand over the curve of her stomach. The baby was growing fast, strong, determined, expressive already. She kicked when jazz played, calmed when Melissa spoke, and hiccuped every time she took a sip of orange spritz. Melissa reached for her glass just as the cafe door opened with its familiar chime. Maxwell stepped in, handsome as ever, but more relaxed these days. No suit, no boardroom edge, just a soft linen shirt rolled at the sleeves, beige slacks, brown loafers, and that calm presence that had first shaken her walls. He grinned the moment he saw her, walked straight to her table, and placed a small box and her favorite drink on the table. "Cannoli with pistachio," he said proudly. "And your orange spritz with just 1 cube of ice. The bartender's still mad I made him redo it." "You're so extra," she smirked, taking a sip. "You married me," he shrugged, sitting across from her. They clinked glasses, the sound soft but solid, like a vow repeated without words. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The sun streamed in over the brick walls. A nearby flower stand released a breeze of fresh lavender and rose petals. A street violinist played something delicate down the alleyway. Melissa leaned into the moment like it was hers to own. And it was. "Looks like someone's already practicing her kick," Maxwell said, watching the small flutter under the dress fabric. "She's going to be bold," Melissa murmured, rubbing the bump. "Just like her mama." "She doesn't stand a chance," Maxwell said, eyes full of awe. "Bold's in her blood." Melissa laughed, leaning back, catching the ceiling fan's breeze. She was glowing, not just from the pregnancy, but from a life that had bloomed in full color. A life she had dared to imagine, then built with grit and grace. Her cafes in Atlanta were now cornerstones of the city, symbols of culture, strength, and soul. The second Bold Brew location in Midtown had been followed by a third in D.C., and a fourth in Chicago was already in the blueprint stages. Her signature coffee line, Brewed Brave, had turned into a full brand: beans, mugs, journals, apparel, all wrapped in messages of audacity and empowerment. "For the woman who doesn't need to ask permission," was their best-selling mug quote. She had delivered a TED Talk that circled the globe in less than a week. "I'm not too much, you're just not enough." Clips of her walking the stage, unapologetic, commanding, and radiant in a fitted emerald dress, were stitched into motivational reels and class discussions alike. But all of that, the empire, the exposure, the accolades, still took a backseat to the title she'd come to cherish most: wife. And soon, mother. Maxwell reached across the table, gently brushing his thumb over her knuckles. "You know, I never told you this." Melissa raised a brow. "Now's your moment, rich boy. That first day at your cafe, I wasn't just passing through." Her head tilted slightly. "Excuse me?" "I'd seen your face in a feature about black-owned businesses. You were standing under that Crooked Crown logo with your arms crossed like you dared the world to say something." Melissa blinked. "I said to myself, that woman, she's fire. So I rerouted my entire morning, told my driver to take me straight to Bold Brew." Melissa stared at him, stunned. "You mean that wasn't just some lucky timing?" "Nope," he said, shaking his head with a smirk. "It was intentional, just like everything I've done since." She threw her head back and laughed, hand on her belly. "Here I was thinking I seduced a billionaire by body slamming a teenager." "Well," he grinned, "that definitely sealed the deal." A breeze swept through the cafe, fluttering the pages of Melissa's open journal on the table. Inside were scribbled baby names: Nia, Zara, Soleil, mixed with coffee flavor profiles, stage design sketches for the Poetry Lounge in Chicago, and a quote she'd written months ago after a long, tearful night filled with doubt. They said I was too much. But look at me now. I'm just enough for myself, my husband, my dreams, and the legacy I'm building. Melissa looked down at the words, then at Maxwell, then at her belly. That was the brand. That was the truth. That was the woman. She didn't just grow businesses. She grew space. She carved out room for herself and other women who had once been told they needed to shrink. Later that night, after dinner under the stars and a stroll along the Arno, Melissa rested against the balcony of their rented apartment. The city glittered below. She held her bump with one hand and a cup of chamomile in the other. Maxwell stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, chin on her shoulder. "You ready for this next chapter?" he whispered. "I've never been more ready," she said. "Even with the 3 a.m. feedings and spit up on your blazer?" "I've got an apron for that," she smiled, "and a heart that's built for more." They stood there quietly as the Florence night wrapped them in its velvet hush. Because Melissa Johnson wasn't a fairy tale. She was a revolution in heels, and the world hadn't seen anything yet. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. Your love, comments, and shares mean everything to me. Grateful for each of you. Let's keep growing together with love from Echoes of Heart